The night my best friend's husband told me he loved me, the candles on her birthday cake were still burning. I can still see the flicker of those candles, the way their light danced across the faces of everyone crowded into my living room. It was a small party, just the way Hannah liked it. Close friends, a few family members, laughter echoing off the walls we'd painted together last spring. I'd spent the whole day cooking, making her favorite lemon cake from scratch, the kind with the tart icing that always made her eyes light up. Hannah and I had been best friends since college. We met in a cramped dorm room, both of us homesick and a little lost, and somehow we'd never let go of each other. She was the kind of friend who remembered your coffee order, who showed up with soup when you were sick, who could make you laugh even when you wanted to cry. We'd been through everything together: bad breakups, new jobs, the loss of her mother, the birth of my daughter, Emma. She was the sister I'd chosen, the one person I trusted with every secret. Her husband, Mark, had always been part of the picture. He and Hannah met at a New Year's Eve party I'd dragged her to, and from the start, he seemed to fit into our lives like he'd always been there. He was charming, quick with a joke, the kind of man who made everyone feel at ease. I liked him, truly. I was happy for them. When they got married, I stood by her side as her maid of honor, holding her bouquet and wiping away tears as she promised to love him forever. Now, 5 years later, I was still her closest friend, and Mark was still the man who made her smile. Or so I thought. That night, the house was full of warmth and noise. Emma, now 8, ran circles around the coffee table, her laughter mixing with the music playing softly in the background. Hannah's younger brother, Sam, was telling a story about his latest disastrous date, making everyone roar with laughter. Mark stood behind Hannah, his hands resting gently on her shoulders, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he watched her blow out the candles. "Make a wish," Emma shouted, bouncing on her toes. Hannah closed her eyes, a small smile playing on her lips. She looked so happy, so content, surrounded by people who loved her. I felt a swell of affection for her, for all the years we'd shared, for the way she'd always been there for me. After the cake was cut and the presents opened, people began to drift out, hugging Hannah and wishing her happy birthday. Emma fell asleep on the couch, her head in my lap, her hair tangled and sweet-smelling. I stroked her hair, listening to the soft hum of conversation as the party wound down. Eventually, it was just the three of us, me, Hannah, and Mark, sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea and picking at the last crumbs of cake. Hannah was tired, her eyes drooping, but she insisted on helping me tidy up. "I'll just take Emma home," she said, stifling a yawn. "You two finish up here." I started to protest, but Mark cut in. "Let me help. I'll walk you out in a minute, Han." She smiled, squeezing his hand. "Don't be long." She gathered her things, kissed Emma's forehead, and slipped out the door, leaving me and Mark alone in the quiet kitchen. I started stacking plates, the silence between us comfortable. Mark leaned against the counter, watching me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said, his voice low, "you really went all out tonight. Hannah's lucky to have you." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "She's my best friend. I'd do anything for her." He nodded, his gaze lingering on me a moment too long. I felt a flicker of discomfort, but I brushed it off. Mark had always been warm, always quick to offer a compliment. We worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the clink of dishes and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I was just about to ask him if he wanted to take some cake home when he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something," he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. I paused, a plate in my hand. "What is it?" He looked up, and in that moment, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Something raw, vulnerable, almost desperate. "I shouldn't say this," he began, his voice trembling, "but I can't keep it in anymore. I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. I stared at him, my heart pounding, the plate trembling in my hands. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "I know it's wrong. I know you're Hannah's best friend, but I can't help how I feel. I've tried to ignore it, to push it down, but it's only gotten stronger. I love you. I have for a long time." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. I set the plate down, my hands shaking. "Mark, you can't." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, my mind racing. "Please, just listen," he said, his voice breaking. "I needed you to know I couldn't keep pretending." I stared at him, my heart pounding, my mind spinning with shock and disbelief. The candles on Hannah's cake were still burning in the other room, their light flickering in the darkness. In that moment, I realized nothing would ever be the same. Before that night, my life had been a tapestry of routines and small joys, woven together by years of friendship, motherhood, and the quiet comfort of knowing where I belonged. I lived in a modest house on Maple Lane, the kind with creaky floors and a garden that always needed weeding. My days started early, packing Emma's lunch, braiding her hair, walking her to the bus stop with a thermos of coffee warming my hands. I worked part-time at the local library, a job I'd taken after my divorce. The library was a haven for me, a place where the world slowed down and the smell of old paper and coffee hung in the air. I loved helping the regulars, Mrs. Jenkins, who always asked for the latest mystery novels, Mr. Patel, who brought his grandson every Saturday for story hour. The library was quiet, predictable, a place where I felt useful and needed. Hannah and I saw each other almost every day. She lived just a few blocks away, in a house she and Mark had bought after their wedding. We'd meet for coffee on her porch or take long walks through the park, talking about everything and nothing. She was the first person I called when Emma lost her first tooth, the one who sat with me through the long nights after my marriage ended. She'd been there for every milestone, every heartbreak, every ordinary Tuesday. Mark was always around, too. He worked as a contractor, his hands always rough and stained from paint or sawdust. He was the kind of man who fixed leaky faucets without being asked, who remembered to bring flowers on anniversaries, who made Hannah laugh with his terrible puns. He was good to her, and by extension, good to me and Emma. He built Emma a treehouse in our backyard, spent weekends helping me patch up the old fence, never asking for anything in return. Our lives were intertwined in a way that felt natural, inevitable. We celebrated holidays together, shared Sunday dinners, watched each other's children when work or life got in the way. There was a rhythm to it all, a sense of belonging, of family, even if we weren't related by blood. Emma adored Hannah, calling her Auntie Han and begging to sleep over at her house whenever she could. Hannah spoiled her with homemade cookies and bedtime stories, treating her as if she were her own. Sometimes, I'd watch them together and feel a pang of gratitude so sharp it almost hurt. After my divorce, I'd worried that Emma would feel the absence of a father, but Hannah and Mark had filled that space with love and laughter. I'd never once questioned the boundaries of our friendship, never once felt anything but affection and gratitude for Mark. He was Hannah's husband, my friend's partner, a fixture in the life we'd built together. I trusted him. I trusted both of them. Looking back, I can see the small moments that might have meant more than I realized. The way Mark lingered in the kitchen after dinner, the way his eyes sometimes found mine across a crowded room, the way he always seemed to know when I needed help, even before I asked. But at the time, I thought nothing of it. I was too busy, too content, too sure of my place in their lives. The week before Hannah's birthday, we'd spent an afternoon together, just the two of us, shopping for decorations and laughing over old memories. She confided in me about her worries. Her job was stressful. She and Mark had been arguing more than usual. She felt tired all the time. I listened, offering comfort and advice, promising her that things would get better. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she'd said, squeezing my hand as we sat in the car, the radio playing softly in the background. "You'll never have to find out," I'd replied, meaning every word. I believed it then. I believed our friendship was unbreakable, that nothing could come between us. But as I stood in my kitchen that night, Mark's confession hanging in the air between us, I realized how fragile everything truly was. After Mark's confession, the world felt off-kilter, as if the ground beneath my feet had shifted and I was the only one who noticed. I barely slept that night, replaying his words over and over, searching for some sign I'd missed, some moment when everything had started to change. The next morning, I moved through my routine in a daze. I made Emma's breakfast, packed her lunch, and walked her to the bus stop, forcing a smile as she chattered about her upcoming spelling test. I waved goodbye, then stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, the cool air stinging my cheeks, trying to steady myself. At the library, I found it hard to focus. I shelved books in the wrong sections, forgot to check in returns, and snapped at poor Mrs. Jenkins when she asked for help finding a new mystery. I apologized, blaming a headache, but the truth was, my mind was 1,000 miles away. I kept thinking about Hannah. She texted me that morning, thanking me again for the party, telling me how much it meant to her. I stared at her message, guilt twisting in my stomach. I wanted to tell her everything, to confess what had happened, but I couldn't. Not yet. I didn't know how. Mark, for his part, acted as if nothing had happened. He sent a group text to me and Hannah, joking about the leftover cake and asking if anyone wanted to help him finish it. I ignored the message, my hands shaking as I set my phone aside. That afternoon, Hannah stopped by the library, her arms full of books for her students. She was a teacher at the elementary school, and she always came in on Wednesdays to pick up new stories for her class. "Hey, stranger," she said, her smile bright. "You look tired, everything okay?" I forced a smile, nodding. "Just a long week." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Mark!" Been in a weird mood. He barely slept last night, kept tossing and turning. I think he's stressed about work. I swallowed hard, guilt prickling at my skin. "Maybe. He's been busy lately." She nodded, glancing around the library. "You know, sometimes I worry he's not happy, that I'm not enough for him." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "You're more than enough, Han. He loves you. You both just need some time together, that's all." She smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "What would I do without you?" I watched her leave, my heart heavy with secrets. I wanted to believe that Mark's confession was a moment of weakness, a mistake he'd regret and never repeat. But as the days passed, I started to notice things I'd never seen before. Mark began finding reasons to stop by my house, dropping off tools he said I might need, offering to help with repairs I hadn't asked for. He lingered in the doorway, his eyes searching mine, his words careful but loaded with meaning. One evening, as I was watering the garden, he appeared at the gate, a bag of mulch slung over his shoulder. "Thought you could use this," he said, setting it down at my feet. I thanked him, trying to keep my distance, but he didn't leave. Instead, he stood beside me, watching as I worked, his presence making the air feel heavy. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "You've been avoiding me." I kept my eyes on the flowers, my hands trembling. "I think it's best if we keep some space, Mark, for Hannah's sake, for all our sakes." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I understand. I'm sorry. I needed you to know how I feel. But I won't say anything else, I promise." I nodded, relief and sadness mingling in my chest. I wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that things could go back to the way they were. But deep down, I knew the damage had already been done. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me, her eyes wide and serious. "Mom, are you sad?" I brushed her hair from her forehead, forcing a smile. "No, sweetheart, just tired." She nodded, snuggling into her pillow. "Auntie Han says you're the bravest person she knows." I kissed her cheek, my heart aching. Auntie Han is pretty brave herself. As I turned off the light and closed her door, I wondered how much longer I could keep pretending. How much longer I could carry the weight of a secret that wasn't mine to bear. The days blurred together, each one heavier than the last. I tried to avoid Mark, but our lives were too tangled for that to last. He was at every gathering, every school event, every Sunday dinner. Each time I felt his eyes on me, a silent question hanging between us. Hannah, meanwhile, seemed happier than she had in months. She texted me photos of the flowers Mark brought home, the dinner he cooked on a random Tuesday, the silly notes he left in her lunchbox. She told me, over coffee one morning, that she thought things were finally getting better between them. "I think he's really trying," she said, her eyes bright with hope. "I think we're going to be okay." I smiled, swallowing the guilt that threatened to choke me. "I'm glad, Han. You deserve to be happy." But the truth was, I was unraveling. Every time Mark walked into a room, I felt a jolt of panic. Every time Hannah mentioned his name, I felt a stab of guilt. I started to dread seeing them together, started to pull away from both of them, making excuses for why I couldn't meet for coffee, why Emma couldn't come over for a sleepover. One Friday evening, Hannah invited me and Emma over for dinner. I almost said no, but Emma begged to see Auntie Han, and I couldn't bring myself to disappoint her. I told myself I could handle it, that I could act normal for one night. The house was warm and full of light when we arrived. Hannah greeted us at the door, pulling me into a tight hug. Mark was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of sauce, his smile easy and practiced. Dinner was a blur of laughter and stories, Emma and Hannah playing a board game while Mark and I cleaned up in the kitchen. I tried to keep my distance, but he found reasons to brush past me, his hand lingering on my arm a moment too long. After dinner, Hannah went upstairs to help Emma find a book to read. Mark and I were alone, the kitchen quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. I meant what I said, you know. I can't stop thinking about you. I stepped back, my heart pounding. Mark, please, you promised. He shook his head, his voice low and urgent. I know, I'm sorry, but I can't help it. I love Hannah, I do, but it's different with you. I feel alive when I'm with you. I stared at him, anger and fear warring inside me. You can't do this. You can't say these things to me. I'm your wife's best friend. I would never. He reached for my hand, desperation in his eyes. Just tell me you don't feel anything. Tell me and I'll stop. I pulled my hand away, my voice shaking. I don't. I love Hannah. She's my family. I would never betray her. He looked away, his shoulders slumping. I'm sorry. I needed to know. At that moment, Hannah and Emma came back downstairs, laughing about something Emma had said. I forced a smile, my heart racing, my hands trembling. We said our goodbyes, and I hurried Emma out the door, barely able to breathe until we were safely in the car. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of Mark's words pressing down on me. I knew I couldn't keep this secret any longer. I knew I had to tell Hannah the truth, no matter the cost. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness in my chest that wouldn't lift. I moved through the motions of breakfast and school drop-off, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Hannah's face, her trust, her laughter, the way she'd always believed in me. I knew what I had to do, but the thought of hurting her made me feel sick. I called the library and told them I needed the day off. I spent the morning packing the house, rehearsing what I would say, how I would say it. I tried to imagine every possible reaction, anger, disbelief, heartbreak. I tried to prepare myself for the possibility that I might lose her forever. By noon, I couldn't wait any longer. I called Hannah and asked if she could come over. She heard the strain in my voice and agreed without hesitation. She arrived 20 minutes later, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her face open and concerned. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. I led her to the kitchen, my hands shaking. I poured us both a cup of tea, but neither of us touched it. "Hannah," I began, my voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you, and I need you to listen to all of it before you say anything." She nodded, her eyes wide and worried. "Of course, you're scaring me." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Mark, he told me he has feelings for me. He said he's in love with me." For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Then she shook her head as if trying to clear it. "What? No, that can't be right." I reached across the table, desperate for her to understand. "I didn't do anything to encourage it, Han. I swear. I told him I would never betray you. I told him to stop. But he kept saying it, and I couldn't keep it from you anymore. You deserve to know the truth." She pulled her hand away, her face pale. "When did this happen?" I swallowed hard. "The night of your birthday, after you left the kitchen, and again last night when we were cleaning up after dinner." She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling with tears. Oh my God, I thought things were getting better. I thought he was finally trying. I felt my own tears spill over. "I'm so sorry, Han. I wanted to protect you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't keep lying." She stood up abruptly, packing the kitchen, her hands clenched into fists. I can't believe this. I can't believe he would do this to me, to us. I watched her, my heart breaking. I'm here for you, whatever you need. If you want me to talk to him, I will. If you want me to stay away, I will. I couldn't keep this from you. She stopped, turning to face me, her eyes blazing. You're my best friend. I need you. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need you. I nodded, relief and sorrow mingling in my chest. I'm not going anywhere. We sat together in silence, the weight of the truth settling between us. I knew things would never be the same, but I also knew that honesty was the only way forward. Later that day, Hannah called Mark and told him to come home early. She wanted to talk, she said, and she wanted me there. I agreed, my stomach twisting with dread. When Mark arrived, the three of us sat in the living room, the air thick with tension. Hannah looked at him, her voice steady but cold. Tell me the truth, Mark, all of it. He hesitated, glancing at me, then back at her. I'm sorry, Han. I never meant for this to happen. I love you, but I can't deny how I feel. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You broke my heart, Mark. You broke our family. He reached for her, but she pulled away. I need time, she said, her voice shaking. I need to think. Mark left, the door closing softly behind him. Hannah and I sat together, holding each other as we cried. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew we'd face it together, one painful, honest step at a time. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Hannah stayed with me and Emma for a while, her presence both a comfort and a constant reminder of the pain we were all carrying. She moved through my house like a ghost, quiet, polite, but never quite present. I tried to give her space, but I also made sure she knew I was there, whether she needed to talk or just sit in silence. Word spread quickly, as it always does in a small town. At first, it was just a few close friends who noticed that Hannah wasn't at home, that Mark was seen alone at the grocery store, that I was picking up Emma from school instead of Hannah. Then the whispers started, at the library, at the coffee shop, even at church. People looked at me with a mix of curiosity and sympathy, their questions hanging in the air even when they didn't say a word. Emma, sensitive as ever, picked up on the tension. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, Is Auntie Han sad because of Uncle Mark? I hesitated, brushing her hair back from her forehead. Auntie Han is just going through a hard time, sweetheart, but we're here for her, and she loves you very much. She nodded, her eyes wide and serious. I love her too. Hannah tried to keep up appearances, but I could see the cracks. She called her brother, Sam, and her father, both of whom offered to let her stay with them. She refused, insisting she needed to figure things out on her own. She started seeing a counselor, someone she could talk to without worrying about judgment or gossip. Mark, for his part, tried to reach out. He called, he texted, he even showed up at my house once, asking to speak to Hannah. I told him she wasn't ready, that she needed time. He looked at me, his eyes full of regret and confusion. I never wanted to hurt her, or you. I nodded, my own feelings a tangled mess. Sometimes wanting isn't enough, Mark. Sometimes you have to live with the consequences. He left, shoulders slumped, and I watched him go, feeling a strange mix of anger, pity, and relief. At the library, Mrs. Jenkins cornered me by the new arrival's shelf. I heard about Hannah and Mark, she whispered, her voice low. Such a shame. You girls were always so close. I forced a smile, keeping my voice steady. We still are. Sometimes families go through hard things, but we're doing our best. She patted my arm, her eyes kind. You're a good friend, dear. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I thanked her, feeling the sting of tears behind my eyes. It was hard not to let the rumors get to me, hard not to wonder what people were saying when I walked by. But I reminded myself that the only people who mattered were the ones in my living room, the ones who knew the truth. Hannah's absence from her own home became impossible to hide. Her neighbors asked after her, her students at school left her notes and cards. She went back to her house one afternoon to collect some things, and Mark was there, waiting on the porch. They talked for a long time, voices low and tense. When she came back to my house, she looked exhausted but lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. "I told him I need space," she said, her voice steady. "I told him I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't pretend everything is okay." I hugged her, proud of her strength, even as my own heart ached for her. The hardest part was facing the world together. We went to the grocery store, to church, to Emma's school events, side by side. Some people avoided us, others offered quiet support. A few, like Mrs. Jenkins, went out of their way to remind us that we weren't alone. Through it all, Hannah and I leaned on each other. We cooked meals together, watched old movies, took long walks in the park. We talked about everything: her marriage, my fears, the future neither of us could quite picture. There were tears, but there was laughter too, and slowly the sharp edges of pain began to soften. Autumn crept in quietly, painting the trees outside my window in shades of gold and crimson. The air grew crisp, and the routines of our lives began to settle into something new, something quieter, but not without hope. Hannah stayed with me for nearly a month. In that time, we rebuilt our friendship, piece by piece, in the small, everyday ways that matter most. We made breakfast together in the mornings, Emma perched on a stool, chattering about school and friends. We took long walks in the evenings, the three of us bundled in sweaters, kicking through piles of leaves and letting the silence between us be gentle, not heavy. Hannah started to smile again, first in small, fleeting moments, then more often, her laughter returning like sunlight after a long rain. She talked to her counselor every week, working through the pain and confusion, learning to forgive herself for not seeing the signs, for loving someone who had let her down. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch with mugs of tea, she turned to me, her eyes clear and steady. "I don't know what's going to happen with Mark. Maybe we'll try counseling together, maybe we won't. But I know I'll be okay. I know I have you and Emma and my family. I know I'm stronger than I thought." I squeezed her hand, pride swelling in my chest. "You are, Han, you always have been." She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you for telling me the truth, even when it hurt. I don't know if I could have done the same." I shook my head, my own eyes stinging. "You would have, that's who you are." Mark called a few times, asking if Hannah would meet him for coffee, for a walk, for a chance to talk things through. She agreed eventually, and they met in the park where they'd had their first date. She told me later that they talked for hours, about their marriage, about the mistakes they'd both made, about the love that was still there, but changed. "I don't know if we'll stay together," she admitted, her voice soft. "But I know I can forgive him. I know I can forgive myself." I nodded, understanding more than I could say. Forgiveness, I'd learned, wasn't about forgetting or excusing what had happened. It was about letting go of the anger, the blame, the need to make sense of something that never would. Emma, wise beyond her years, sensed the shift in our home. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "Auntie Han is smiling again. I like it when she's happy." I kissed her forehead, my heart full. "Me too, sweetheart, me too." As the leaves fell and the days grew shorter, Hannah decided it was time to move back to her own house. She hugged me tightly, promising that nothing would ever come between us again. "We're family," she said, her voice fierce. "No matter what." I watched her drive away, a bittersweet ache in my chest. I knew there would be hard days ahead, but I also knew we'd face them together, as we always had. Sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who surprise us the most, sometimes with kindness, sometimes with heartbreak. I never imagined I'd be the one holding my best friend as she cried over her husband's betrayal, or that I'd be the one carrying a secret that could shatter everything we'd built together. But life has a way of testing the bonds we think are unbreakable, and teaching us that real love, real friendship, means telling the truth, even when it hurts. If you've ever found yourself caught between loyalty and honesty, or if you've had to choose between protecting someone and telling them what they need to hear, I hope you know you're not alone. Sometimes, the hardest conversations are the ones that save us. Sometimes, forgiveness is the bravest thing we can offer to others and to ourselves. Would you have told your best friend the truth, even if it meant risking everything? Or would you have kept the secret, hoping it would fade away? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this story touched your heart, Please subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember, even after the deepest hurt, healing is possible.